Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. This is Steph Lee, founder of Host Agency Reviews. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday. So happy to have you. I think this is our first Friday in December, which is, can't believe we're in December. And those listening in, we have Jennifer Dugans with Dugan's Travel on the show as a co-host. You might have heard her from previous episodes. So welcome, Jennifer, again.
Thank you for having me.
So excited because the questions that came in there, the second one we'll get to, I don't know as much in this area, so I'm really glad to have you as a co-host. Before we get started, reminder to everybody, Host Week is coming up. I've been pounding it into everybody's head that it is coming up and we want to get you registered. There are lots of great things. We are finalizing our schedule. We'll be getting that out in the next couple of weeks, but lots of great speakers, great content. We have, I think, about 20 hosts already, and we have all the major consortia will be on board this year, I think. And so amazing content. You can hear from everybody all in one place, all from the comfort of your desk. And you can watch it live where you get to participate in the comments. It's really fun and lively. Or you can watch it at your own time. So you can register. It's free. Go to hostagencyreviews.com/hostweek. We will put the link in the description as well. And let's see. Our first question today is from Jenn B. And Jenn asks, what is the best way to contact a resort to do a site inspection, especially if the resort is out of the country? Is it email? Is it phone call? What do you, what's the process that you recommend to your advisors?
So we actually do this often for our agents. And a lot of times we will either work with our BDM of that particular chain of hotels that maybe we want to see, or there's companies like, for example, let's just talk about like Cancun or one of the locations in Mexico. We usually work with Amstar, and since they are a, they have contacts at all the different hotels, they'll handle everything for us. So we'll give them a list of hotels that we want to see, and then they drive us and take us and usually even escort us around the property while we're getting our tour, which is really helpful because you've got that support there.
Oh, yeah.
But also, like, for example, if you've ever gone to Mexico, you know that to get into any of these hotels, right, you have to be on a list, right? They're not just going to let anyone come in. So they coordinate all that. You're on the list. They drive you around. It works really nice to do that. Now, if you want it to do it independently and you want it to reach out, it's best to reach out to the sales managers at those hotels. I would recommend via email just to have that track of being able, point of contact, have records so that maybe you could print it off in case you do get to the hotel and they're like, you're not on the list.
Things have been known
right?
to fall through the cracks sometimes.
Yes. And so, and I mean, it's good for our clients, right, that they don't want to let everyone in to a hotel. But that's just something that I recommend for our agents that are going down, because a lot of times agents are going on a personal trip and they think, well, let's check out a few hotels while we're there. But like I said, a company like Amstar, a lot of those ground transportation companies have those contacts, right? They know the people and they know what they need to do in order to get you there. I think that generally works, though a lot of the tour operators too, if you've got a favorite tour operator, you could reach out to your BDM there and they might be able to set up something for you. But definitely don't just go and think that you're going to get to see a hotel, especially over, in Mexico or the Caribbean, because a lot of those, they have gates and they're not going to let you just show up. So, but if it's, US based, you can definitely just reach out to the general manager and see about setting up something. It all depends, because if they're full capacity, they're not going to be able to show you a room. If so,
or if they haven't had any cleaned, they may not want to show you.
Yes.
So it is important to call ahead, Jen. So I'm glad that you are thinking ahead. if say you're in Europe and you pass by a hotel and you're curious about it, you could walk in and see, maybe someone will let you in, but your chances are going to be a lot higher if you're planning ahead, which is really great.
Yeah, we've done that in London. We went and toured a few hotels, but we worked already ahead of time, so they knew what to expect and be able to show us some rooms. So, and keep in mind, if you're doing that, set your expectations low on what you're going to be able to see, because it really does just depend. We've gone places and they're like, I'm sorry, we just can't show rooms, we're full, or we just don't have the cleaning crew to make sure those rooms are good. Then other times we've done it where we've gotten to see everything. So one of our last hotel inspections, we got to see everything, including the spa, but then we weren't able to see a hotel room. So it's give and take sometimes.
That's perfect. And Jenn, if I'm not sure if you're aligned with a host agency, but I think it sounds like you might be a little bit newer. So I think great first step is to reach out to that host agency, because they're going to have the BDM contacts. And if you're not familiar with Amstar, that would be something that as you get in the industry, you'll become more familiar with, but would probably not know exists if you're newer to the industry. So that's why it's good to check in with your host. If you're someone that's independent and not with a host agency, you can always reach out to your consortia and check in with them, and they can hopefully set you up with some, hook you up with some new relationships where you can reach out to them and get everything set up. I'm also going to link to 2 articles we have. One is on the definitive site inspection checklist, and the other is on how to make the most of a cruise ship inspection. Because cruise ship, same thing.
Yes.
We're talking, reach out to the BDM and they'll be able to, you have to set it up in advance because you have to get okayed at the port and to get on the ship, things like that. But these articles are really nice because they're a little bit old school. And you print off, but it gives you an idea of things to look for. And the actual article talks about, for new advisors, you go and you're like, I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to be looking at here. So it gives you at least a framework that you can build off of. I'll also link to our article on fam trips, because while our free downloads for the site inspection and the cruise ship inspection are printable, there are apps out there for if you're on a fam trip and being able to keep track of the different trips and the information, uploading pictures, things like that. And they're great. They do have a cost to them though, but we'll link to that as well. Let's see. Okay, this is our big question here, Jennifer, from Larry P. Larry, this is a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. After organizing group tours as a volunteer for my club, I am now transitioning to becoming a travel professional. This is very exciting. I love your podcast and website. Thank you. I'll be doing the 7-day setup soon. So happy to hear that, Larry. Okay, so I do group tours that are customized for a special interest. Numerous times I have tried to book a block of rooms with a hotel, and the pricing that they quote me is more expensive than what I can get from booking.com or agoda.com. In the most recent example, it was 133 room nights, and the savings by leaving the rooms on booking.com was over $15,000. Additionally, the in-house contract direct from the hotel usually requires upfront deposits and has much worse cancellation policies. I really want to help the hotels, but I can't wrap my head around why I should book direct when it costs more and has worse cancellations. What are your thoughts? So Jennifer, I know you're on the front lines and probably deal with this. So what do you see? What do you advise advisors?
So this is definitely industry-wide an issue. Keep in mind that a lot of these wholesalers, and that's what I would say, like booking.com or some of these different websites, they contract out that they're going to sell X amount of space, and so they get it at a cheaper rate. Now, what that means for a travel advisor is sometimes you have to work with someone else rather than the hotel directly, though I would always encourage you to work with the hotel first and see what you can do. Now, keep in mind that sometimes, yes, there's going to be a huge price difference and it might not work for you, but you might be able to contract different things in with your hotel group
Ooh,
contact.
great tip.
Like maybe they'll give you some free nights from some free space that might offset the pricing a little bit. Now, control is a big issue for groups. And if you are going to book your group through someone that doesn't work with travel advisors, you're going to lose that control. So keep
And
that
that's
in
like
mind.
Agoda
Yes.
and
Yeah.
booking.com. Yep.
Yeah. So because you're going to have to go through them. Say your group shows up and that they don't have all their rooms, or the rooms you contracted with them or you booked through them. Maybe you did a bunch of ocean view rooms and it ends up that they want to put them, looking at a parking lot. You don't have a whole lot of recourse there because you're going to have to go through this company that you booked with to then have them reach out to the hotel, and it can become a mess. And then you're also, if your clients have come to you, they're looking at you for, why is this not right? So if you can, it's better to work with someone at least that works with travel advisors. And there are, there's Expedia Tap, there's Beds Online, there's all your tour operators will do group land only. So really make sure you've exhausted all your options before you just go and work with someone who's basically your competitor in many ways, right? Because they are a wholesaler that they're getting something on the back end of it because they're the person on record. So that's always something to think about because things do go wrong, like we said in the last question.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that control or someone to call, you're at the mercy of that website provider, that or wholesaler. And that can be a bad place to be, especially if your group is counting on you. Things I know we've talked about before on past episodes about protecting yourself and making sure that you have these group contracts in place. If you're booking it through a website that doesn't work with travel advisors, are you protected? What's the recourse? Even worse is, what if you've given all this money to a website or a company that goes under? What's going to happen? So there's lots of things to think about. So protecting yourself is definitely one of them, protecting your clients and making sure you get what you really have paid for.
I really like the tip on talking with the company. In this case, with the $15,000, it's going to be hard to bridge that gap. But in other ones, if you can get free parking or you can get, free continental breakfast, different things like that can really help. And a couple things when we were chatting on this, Jennifer, that came to mind is, Larry, it sounds like you're new and just getting into things, which is very exciting. And I think this is not, I don't want to say this is commonplace, but it's also not unusual. And I don't want people to think that that means that travel advisors don't have access to the best rates, because anyone that's saying that booking.com always has the lowest rate or travel agents always have the lowest rate, they're wrong, because there are so many contracts and negotiations. There is no way to have anything definitive about who has the best rates.
Yes.
So I'll tell you that. But the other thing I wanted to say is that when you're looking at doing these room nights, I want to give some context on why hotels have these contracts and why they require the deposits and the cancellation. Because essentially what they're doing is they're holding that space for you. And if you walk away, and you walk away, 2 months prior or 2 weeks prior, their capacity level goes down and they're not compensated for it all. So that's the reasoning behind it on the hotel side. And versus when you go to booking.com and you put 133 bookings in, all at the time, you have to pay that all up front. and get all that taken care of right away. And their cancellation penalties, they already have the money, so they don't really, it's all kind of gravy after that. So that's the one thing I would say. The other thing I would say is once you get into the industry, there's going to be more options that open up to you, so that when you can go direct to the hotel to get bookings. But as Jennifer mentioned, there's also going to be tour operators that will carry that hotel that might be able to offer you some different rates that are available that have land only options. You're going to have Expedia Tap, beds online that you can check, which is really popular with a lot of advisors. So Larry, I don't want you to get discouraged and think this is going to be the story of your life going forward for all of your groups, because that will not be the case. It's going to be a mixed bag. And that's part of what being a travel advisor is, and why people want to hire a travel advisor is because it's just really overwhelming with all the options. And so hopefully that gives you a little context on why the hotels, when you're booking direct, have those contracts for you, so that you can explain it to your clients as well, and explain to them, when we book direct with booking.com, these are all individual bookings. They're not tied together.
Right. Which is another thing to consider, is that say it's a massive hotel that you're booking, you're going to have people all over the place. You're not going to necessarily get those perks as working with the hotel directly. Now, if it's outrageously a different price, that's also something to bring up with the hotel, is if you can show that, look, I can get it elsewhere for this amount, will they negotiate? Absolutely. It's always something to talk about. In our industry, there's a lot of times where you're going to be going to suppliers and telling them, price matching. Like I always tell people, it's kind of like when you go to Walmart and find out that Target has something cheaper. There's that in our industry. And so you have to learn how to, navigate that. And sometimes they can't match it, but a lot of times suppliers want the opportunity to match it. And they don't know everything that's out there. Sometimes you even some suppliers who work also with the public might have something on their public website that you're not seeing on the travel agent side. And that is a conversation that you have to have. And sometimes they don't know it and they can fix it. So don't ever think that what you are seeing online, or you're thinking, oh my gosh, this supplier is so much more expensive. You might need to have a conversation, because there is wiggle room in things. And with a hotel, that would be the same conversation. And maybe the hotel that you're looking at isn't willing to move, but what if there's a hotel down the street that is? And so always consider that you have many options, and don't feel like I can't do anything about because this website has a cheaper price.
Exactly. Yeah. And because of the industry being built on, like Jennifer said, the relationships that are there, there is usually room for negotiations when it comes to groups, and then hotels actually expect you to negotiate. The contract that they give you, especially if you're doing like a big group or a conference, you should be negotiating and saying, we want our AV included, or we want this. I didn't know that when I first started at my parents' agency, and I wish someone would have told me that.
Yes, it's hard, because especially if you're new, right? You don't want to go in and be like, I want this, unless you're a super great negotiator. That's a hard thing to be, especially if you're new and unexperienced and you're like, I don't know. So, and going back to, if you're with a host agency, your host agency will have those contacts. They will have that information to help you. Your consortium has contacts. There's lots of things out there that you got to kind of get used to.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, right. Yes. And that's a common question. Like, we hear it all the time, especially from our new agents. They're like, I don't understand. Why is this so much cheaper? And so sometimes we have to just, okay, let's break it down. Is this exactly the same? Are we comparing the same thing? Have you thought about this supplier? And a lot of times agents are like, oh, I didn't even know that that was an option. So know that you have many options. So
Great point. And just to clarify too on the pricing and negotiations, this is not to say that when you go to say Apple Vacations and on there that if you're booking a package for your client that's negotiable. I want to just clarify that.
Yes, right.
It's when we're talking about groups and dealing with the
Yes.
hotels directly and things like that.
Yeah. And like if you had a price with Apple and you wanted to use a different supplier, maybe that conversation can happen with your, your favorite supplier or vice versa if you found it on, it all depends.
Mhm.
So I think that agents have to figure out what works for them. And if you've decided that you really want to work with a supplier, is have those talks.
Mhm. And
I
tap
think,
into the host's knowledge. Like
yes,
that's, the years they've accumulated, the
yes,
knowledge over time that you can tap into to learn things like, oh, these are actually negotiable and that
right.
there's other options and these are what they are. So
Yeah, and honestly, like for me, being a host agency owner, that's kind of my job, is to make sure that I have those contacts, and we're constantly building contacts with different suppliers and hotels and stuff, because we need that for our agents. And I'm not any different than other host agencies owners out there. That's why we have those relationships, is for our independent agents. Because if you're solo, which I was solo way back in the day when I first started, it's a lot harder to have that talk when they're saying, well, what business are you really going to bring in if you're a solo person versus someone who's part of a bigger organization. So if you're independent, definitely you need a consortium to work with, because that will give you that. And then if you're with a host agency, just use those resources, because that's kind of what we do. That's the point of a host agency, is all those resources and the numbers together. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help.
And speaking of resources, Abby, we've kind of changed things up a little bit, and Abby has been putting in some resources for me to share with everybody on my notes. So a couple of resources we want to put in and share with you that are kind of applicable to Larry's question. The first one is we have an article on what suppliers want you to know about booking groups. So this is from the supplier perspective. Larry, could be great for you to get an idea of things. And we also have one on some insider group booking tips from advisors, which is a really fun one as well. And then a couple other ones that are more kind of ancillary, but we have one on, I'm not sure if you're booking air with your groups or not, Larry, but we have an article on the GDS that gives you some options for booking air without the GDS system. And then an article on using a travel agent versus booking online, kind of what the differences are. And then Abby also threw in, just for fun, an article on how much do travel agents make per booking. So we'll toss those in the description. And while we're doing that, Jennifer, if people want to learn more about Dugan's Travel, what's the best way? We're going to link to the profile, but anything else that you'd like to tell them or places they should check out?
So we have a main website. It's joindugans.com. And that has all our information, as well as our supplier our host profile here on HAR. So we try to put as much information out there so that people know all about us, open book kind of thing. So if you're, looking for a home, we'd love to have that conversation.
Perfect. Well, we'll link to those for everyone so you can check it out. And coming up in the next couple weeks, and we will be doing it every week, I think. Let me see. Yeah, we are partying all week long in December, even during the holidays. So coming up, December 13th, we will be having Next Week Travel Edge. We'll be on. Kendra will be our co-host. December 20th and December 27th, we are spending the holidays with Dugan. So we hope to see you all there. And Jennifer, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for the great questions.
Absolutely. So if you have questions, you can go to hostagencyreviews.com/Friday15. Submit your very own question, holiday greetings, pictures of your dogs, cats, turtles, whatever you would like. We love fan mail. So Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, everyone. And we will see you all next Friday, 12 p.m. Central Time. Thank you.
Bye.